Cooper Square, the 40,000 square feet of academic space. Obviously, originally the Woolman Auditorium was supposed to appear there, and instead we have Rose Auditorium in NAB. And I just don't understand the nature of whether we somehow get that space rent-free, and then now we're going to decide to rent it to some other educational institution so that they can use it, and we're going to profit off of the difference between our free space with what we're paying.
It's just an extreme detail.
It's a weird thing that's going on that I don't know the answer to, but these are the kind of things where we ask questions.
Part of me feels like even in this room there's a little bit of a split as to what we talk about when we talk about free Cooper U. Some people see that tuition is a necessary evil as a transition to when we get back to not charging tuition.
Now we're still in debt, or we still have to pay this and can't afford it, and we have to institute all this new stuff. So I feel we buy into their logic and reasoning when we start to do things and think. So I agree completely with living within our means. Living within our means does not necessarily mean then taking advantage of, as they do, the Manhattan real estate market and selling off more assets in order to whatever. I think when you do changing governments, you do reaffirm mission, increase intuition, you can do those things without necessarily putting yourself completely into the mindset that created the problem.
Well, and also, we're only thinking of in terms of the problems that have been clear to us in the way that the administration puts it.
Exactly.
But I think the administration gets a big chunk of the budget, exactly. And we should start thinking about, in terms of when we're organizing, of thinking of structures that would replace the structures that the administration is
a bottom-up architecture instead of just tweaking it.
Right, exactly. So that we create kind of a mentorship program where students with can get paid to do administrative tasks and go to mentors such as yourselves and say, hey, how do I do this? You guys teach us, or you guys get someone to teach us, and then we can do it. And I think we can reduce costs like way more than what the administration says that we can, because they're, at the end of the day, they're trying to save their jobs and their expansion kind of deals.
And I believe these are completely tied into the point that I was trying to make about creating all these new programs. So if you're going to create all these new programs, obviously you need administration in order to do it. So therefore, why should we be getting rid of administration? Because we're cutting off the ability to do what we then want to do.
So just to, before we kind of go in like super specifics, I want to be like mindful of the time. It's now like 6:40 p.m. I also want to make sure there's space for other groups to speak and report back if they have report backs. And I think that we should also be really aware that perhaps not everyone in this room is quite as versed on like all the things we're talking about. So if we're using abbreviations or if we're referring to specific documents, let's maybe not do it quite so casually because it's not easy to keep up. I know even on my end, like being really involved, it's still also very hard to keep up. There are certain things that we are better at doing than others, and so like I think let's try and keep the conversation a little bit more broad, because this ultimately, this body this year, we're not really making any decisions tonight. It's more, we should use the space more as like a clearinghouse for like getting on the same page, as like I guess like saying how we feel about things, but also where we're at on doing things, and maybe we can make some sort of agreement to meet again in a decision-making capacity. But I don't feel like tonight we have any obligation or even any ability to do that. I did hear a lot of questions that came out of that, and I could read them if they're helpful. Things that we're talking. One was what we mean when we talk about a reunion. There are points that we need more clarity on. From whom can we get that clarity, or is it something that we can get ourselves? What can we do now, this summer before tuition happens? Do we think John Stepp will get his contract renewed? How can we get meaningful participation in this process? Is that something we want? And can we get rid of the board of trustees and also growing down and living within our means?
I make a suggestion. Yeah, I hear all this question. Maybe like this is a good time for us to let individual groups report back what they have done. Maybe start with like CUAA and then Friends of Cooper, and then just really go around real quick, 5 minutes each group. Yeah. But something you want to?
I just wanted to add a question, if possible. I know that there are people in the room who have been part of discussion about forming associates of Cooper Union, and I think that that's something that's really important for us to be talking about and for all of us to be learning about. So I would love if we could have a report back on that as well.
I agree with you, and so the one of the things I put on the agenda for the 7/24 Alumni Association that we're going to have is that I've asked Sonny Dwyer to come and make a presentation on the history of the Friends of Cooper Union. What was the original documentation, and then also, I mean the associates of Cooper Union, and then what role that may play in governance going forward if it's taken on.
There actually was a precedent agreement also in the New Yorker article in 1937. It was that they had a little museum that was part of the union, and they formed a little group to help have membership in that museum. And it was called Friends of Cooper Union. So Friends of Cooper Union has revived.
John, is there any way that we could maybe be in touch about having the same group or someone else who's been working on that give a presentation somewhere that's not exclusive to alumni?
Actually, I don't see any reason why we can't open up the meeting.
Alumni council meetings are open.
Exactly. So you guys are all welcome to come.
That's been a huge change.
Yeah. It's not closed.
What happened was that Sean
I can't imagine why they should be closed.
What happened was that Sean and I showed up for a meeting, and they had a 10 to 15-minute debate about whether or not we were allowed to be there.
Well, that was initiated by one particular individual who should go nameless in this meeting.
I have the and it was weird because there were already other invited guests there. And the result, which to give them enormous credit, was to say, no, you're allowed to be here. And then when the next alumni council meeting occurred, the alumni office actually sent out an invitation for the alumni saying this is an open meeting and you can all come. So
I think it might be good to get students there to maybe make a Facebook event. If you guys don't,
I will warn you all. I make one on the Alumni Association page.
Oh, cool.
And the reason I do that is that when we make events on Facebook pages, anyone who's elected, a lot of technology will automatically add it to your iPad for you. Cool. And so, like, several alumni just popped up and saying, I didn't know what this was, but it was added to my iPad.
I will warn you, however, that alumni council meetings are agenda-driven and Robert Rules of Order-driven and extremely boring.
But it's not that we would be going there for the presentation.
So
it's also to meet afterwards, and we could probably open it up to like a forum towards the end or something. So yeah,
Sounds good.
we'll make it easy.
I'll make sure that we share that too, so that students show up and they know that Sandy will be there.
So anything more from CUAA?
Well, I can't really speak for CUAA because I'm not, we got 3 weeks to go. I also, before I speak for CUAA, I should talk to CUAA. You know what I mean? So I've got a lot of thoughts. A lot of you guys already know my thoughts. But to actually make them, to actually speak as a mouthpiece for CUAA, I'm really not in a position to do that.
John, are there any other
Agenda
changes
for-
in the executive committee?
Yeah, there are.
I mean, Rocco is still there, Robert Tana's still there.
And I've asked Daryl to stay
Daryl
on
is
as the
still
head of
there.
the annual fund.
Spring, I guess.
And I've asked Sean to be the head of the communication
So
committee.
Sean is taking over from there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
the one change. You're the one change.
And then Kevin Slavin is going to be the
Alumni trustee. but
alumni
that's not-
trustee.
Yes.
And then we're going to figure out what committees we're going to put together and who's going to be where. So generally, I want to shake things up quite a bit.
Well, it's obviously
Because-
significant that
I'm going to be
And
adjusting
I will tell-
communications a lot.
Exactly. And I will tell you that the metaphor that I used to describe CUAA for a long time was that it reminded me of an inbred Appalachian family, in which the family portrait was everybody was cross-eyed. So I want to shake that up and get more representation. And I'll tell you, one of my major goals is to change Founders Day so it doesn't take place in the winter, and nobody has to wear ties, and find some big venue where we could have like 1,000 people come. Maybe we have, food trucks and drink trucks show up, and you can just buy whatever it is you want to eat, and just come and hang out with everybody. Yeah, exactly.
Well, since John's reluctant to report on what the COA did because they haven't done things yet, then at least let's put on the record, number one, that last year through a unanimous resolution, the Cooper Union Alumni Association did support the mission of the school and the free tuition policy, and as well as committing to fundraising for the school as part of that resolution. And that there was a recent election that within 1 week, that's what I keep trying to remind myself, was that it actually
It's really
happened
astounding.
in 1 week. That in 1 week,
The slate
Friends of
12
Cooper
was put
Union
in.
decided to create a write-in campaign for Kevin Slavin. If you were paying attention to your email, they put my name out without even asking me whether I wanted it. But that quickly turned around within a day. And a slate of 12 people amongst the people who were running was also put out. Sean, you say that twice as many people voted in that election, and
Double their turnout.
double the turnout, and that all 12 people who happened to be named, as well as the write-in candidate, slaughtered anybody else who was on the ballot that year. So, and finally, one more thing I guess a couple more things to add is that a letter was sent out that we all know about to the Cooper Union community or Cooper Union Alumni Association, trying to publicize a online petition, which garnered 200 signatures, most of which are fake. The Alumni Association did not put out any publicity about Friends of Cooper Union's petition to not only get rid of Volusia, but also to do no confidence in Epstein, which is at 2,300 and counting, including a whole lot of alumni who are putting their alumni year on that. Any claims that there is a, quote, silent majority, I think have been completely slaughtered by these recent events of the last month. There is obviously no silent majority of any kind out there that is supporting Volusia, supporting Epstein, supporting tuition.
And I would add that, like, part of that, those communication channels.
And I would do anything for love. Oh, I would do anything for love. I would do anything for love. But I won't do that, or that, or this. No, not this. Definitely not this. It hurts, but I kinda like it.
Like kids shows? Your Diamond will recommend more. Introducing personal show recommendations based completely on you. A first for TV and only from Cox.
Like get abused over and over, and part of the Sladen thing. Friends of Cooper editorially was like super helpful, and like they have a great tone and a great audience. But a lot of that communication infrastructure came from recent alumnus, and also students. We're building our communications sort of so that we can have a better mailing list. A lot of that had to do with Joe Riley, who's on vacation right now, who like I credit with single-handedly getting Kevin elected. Even though I know a lot of people helped write the emails. So yeah, we've like surpassed them in likes. We're building our own mailing list database of alumni, students, faculty, groups that are interested. So hopefully we can start putting out, like, part of getting on the same page is being able to put out a counter narrative on a regular basis and as needed, because I would say that's what did the Kevin campaign.
One thing also to point out is that we have, in essence, taken, I wouldn't say taken back because they never really ruled over it, but the alumni themselves are moderating and in charge of the LinkedIn group. The alumni themselves are moderating, posting the Facebook group. About the only thing that the alumni office still controls is CUalumni.com, and I think it would be great to keep that over as well.
We're trying to work on restructuring that as well. They also own the Twitter feed.
But all I can tell you is that class reps have the ability to blast out using CUalumni.com.
And, you know, just to follow up on what Casey said, I mean, one of the reasons I'm here is because you guys really get it, and you have been able to set up an infrastructure of communication in a very short period of time and organize yourselves in a way that has actually stopped a lot of the activity that was going on and has delegitimized the narrative that was taking place, which we've started to see really had no basis other than an enrollment conversation. And one of the things that's really vital is to continue setting up an independent infrastructure for communication. Because one of the problems that we have within the alumni association is that there was a memorandum of understanding that was written in 1973, which was rewritten, I believe, in 2000, wasn't it, with Jay Isman. And we're not keeping to that memorandum of understanding, which is problematic as far as I'm concerned. So one of the things that's very problematic is that we in the Alumni Association, there's this database of all these alumni mailing addresses, which we're not able to use to communicate directly to the alumni.
Why is that?
That's a very good question.
They want to control the access to the alumni.
Well, it
doesn't even make sense.
Well, it makes perfect sense. So for about approximately a year and a half ago, there was a desire to send out an email blast to all the alumni, and it was stopped by the administration. And it really caused such, yeah, because they actually control the actual website with all the information. So one of the things that we've decided to do is we have to do something about that on 2 points. One, set up our own.
I think that's great. I think you do need to set up your own website and introduce
Well, we need to have our own database.
Control of the database. Please don't refer to the official website that's controlled by the administration.
There was, Karina set up Cooper Union Commons, which really didn't, there wasn't enough computer power behind it, so it didn't work really well. But and it was major triumph to finally get a newsletter out to the alumni to tell them that Cooper Union Commons existed. That was like the big triumph of the entire academic year, was to get them to merely acknowledge that Cooper Union Commons existed. Now, Cooper Union Commons was filled with announcements of the next Forensic Cooper Union breakout session, the whole process that created the way forward. The administration was doing everything they could to try and make believe it did not exist and not let anything alumni know about it.
But I think the broader
A
point
major
is
triumph for you
not
guys.
wait for them.
Obviously,
Exactly right.
I think what we want to not wait for them to have their own back channel while we also fight for having the official channel too.
Exactly.
That is important.
well, that's what I said is happy.
Who owns the database? And if we ended up with a copy of the database, would that be a violation?
The thing is,
Ended up with
the Alumni Association owns the database, but who has, you know, well, that's the thing, is that the council and the administration together are the CUAA.
Guys,
So we're getting a little too deep into
So,
it. Yes.
but one of the things that we're touching on is, and you're starting to infer, is legal matters. And so one of the things that I want to say personally for myself, and I'm not speaking for the Alumni Association, is I am personally opposed to making this go legal for two reasons. One, because I'm not willing to have someone else speak for me. I think I know how to use my mouth, and I think most of us who went to Cooper learned that skill. And second, there are actually three reasons. I don't want the forum to be in a law court. I don't think it belongs there. I think we have to set up a mechanism where we can chart Cooper's future together and actually make it go forward. And then the third reason is that I'm opposed to it is it's going to cost the school a ton of money. That I don't want them spending it on high-priced lawyers. So one of the things that I want to do is exactly what we kind of touched upon, is work on front channel, back channel, and side channel to achieve our ends. So if I can work with you guys and work with the students and the alumni and set up our own database while we try to wrest control of what's there so we can eventually put it all together, that's what I want to do.
With regard to the database, I mean, it's not in exactly a very usable form, but I've got two alumni directories from 5 years separate apart. The second one is on a disk. So I mean, the content
It's as good a place to start as any.
Exactly.
We agree.
We got 20 people.
Yeah, if you wanna, and the other thing is that like some people have official like someone like CUAA, like it's probably not great to do it via that channel, but like students have a lot more freedom to do things like in a way that's unencumbered. So maybe you can just get in touch with one of
The
us.
second one is also on a disk, so you're not going to have. You're just going to have to cut and paste.
Yeah, perfect.
That's it.
Oh, I'll get in touch with you.
Is the new database, what program is that through? It's just like a document you have?
So basically, yeah, not to get too like deep into that particular issue, but for now we set up a MailChimp, which is just like a standard mailing list database thing, and we're also categorizing by whether someone is alumni, faculty, or student, and what year they graduated, and also zip code. All those fields are optional, but it'll just let us track in a bunch of different ways. And going into it, my idea is to make it like a community resource. Obviously, it's tricky because you don't want a zillion blasts and things. But then, so one is like a blast sort of database that's categorized, and that's I think student run, like Students for a Cooper Union. The other is setting up a two-way listserv between, it was called alumni and students, but maybe we could broaden it. And that's kind of like a back and forth email Google group, so that anytime you want to talk to a group like this, you could send an email to this list and it would go to everyone, and then a conversation would happen.
That's actually a really good point. Is that one of the first things I'm doing? I'm not even meeting for becoming the chair of communications, but I'm making Google groups for all committees. So if you want to talk to the events committee, you should just be an email, send it to the events committee. And I'm also making.
Why it took this long to do that is just
I don't know.
beyond me.
I don't know what happened. And I tried to go through official channels and no one wants to do shit. So
It was the appellation.
but I'm also making an extra layer around every one of those committees that's open access to everybody. So if you want to join, it'll be this like events committee plus that anyone who's interested in doing anything for events can just join. You don't have to be in the committee. Just join it. Talk about it.
We really want to make the Alumni Association open-ended in terms of entry and participation.
Is there a way to keep it out?
John, was there
yeah, I know. We could, but it's the easiest way to go.
at the last online council meeting, there was something distributed related to defining alumni this way, defining alumni that way. It's kind of weird that there seems to be wording that says if you've been there 1 year and then you go somewhere else and then your graduating year comes back, you somehow magically rejoin a COA.
One of the things that I want to do and one of the initiatives I want to take forward is to look at how you can be a member of the Alumni Association. And personally, I would like to open it up to people who are in their final year of Cooper. Personally, that's what I would like to do. But it's not my call, Barry. In other words, we have to bring, yes, it is.
I also think just we should make sure, like, just because it's a group thing, not to get into back and forths, and also to maybe continue with the go around. And also, Barry, I know you can fill in a lot of good stuff, but to turn it into a back and forth should probably happen later.
Yeah.
And I also think that, so is there other stuff to add to COA? Okay, cool. The other thing just to note is I think there aren't that many other groups, like, besides, Cooper doesn't have, like, I don't think there's that many groups. And so even if individuals have, like, I know we did a quick name go around.
Aren't there, Casey? Aren't there a bunch of groups, really?
Well, that's, I think, part of making something, it's 7 o'clock, so I feel like we're probably going to have to figure out with this group here, since we do have a lot of people here, a next forum to have these conversations, because the only 4 things that I can see that we really need to talk about more in depth are the legal issues, because I've heard many people that feel the way John feels, and I know many people that feel the opposite. I'm personally not sold on either, but I feel like that's why we need to have a discussion.
I agree.
Money, which is like, it's one of the biggest things that we as students talk about. And
Fundraising is a general thing.
Wow, well, I mean, there's really very few things that are keeping
So what are the other two?
our time frame, because I see that there's a lot of discrepancy between people who feel like we have a matter of like 2 to 3 months and people who feel that we have a year or a year and a half to do things. And then the last
Welcome to American Family Insurance Dream Camp, where 3 winners and their mentors will spend 2 amazing days learning how to make their dreams come true.
For over 75 years, people have saved money with Geico. Sorry. From the top. For over 75 years, yeah. Keep it together. What are you doing there? Stop making me laugh.
Geico, saving people money for over 75 years.
is like 4 or 10 years.
So we consider anybody who's not a, well, for the Pioneer, so anyway, so Casey has written a piece that we published, obviously, while he was still a student. So on one hand, there's consensus, there's other websites, whatever, but to the extent that people either are looking for helping out and can't find their niche, please contact the Alumni Pioneer, and we'll give you something to do.
I wanted to ask, with the upcoming trustee meeting, I just sort of stumbled on the thing that said that they're supposed to be considering student representation, or they promised
Yeah, wasn't that a formal request made?
Yeah, I mean, has there been any, I mean, are they going to be reminded of that? I mean,
It's not clear what that means to me. The first time I heard about it was in December. During the lock-in, they announced their little, like, whatever summary of their board meeting. They said, we'll consider student representation.
So they said that, that's what I remember.
And I mean, right in December.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they restated it.
They said they would talk about it.
Okay, so let me give you a little historical background.
Representation is very big.
Let me give you a little historical background because we went through the exact same thing in 1983. In 1983, the Cooper Pioneer asked whether or not they could attend Board of Trustees meetings and cover it. They said they hadn't considered that yet, and they would put it on the agenda. We attempted to then say, well, if you don't have a policy, yay or nay, then can't we just show up? So we attempted to just show up, and they said, no, you can't do that, they threw us out. And then they officially put it on their agenda and gave us the decision that, no, you may not be at the Board of Trustees meeting. So I wouldn't press them on it. They've already made a promise that they will at least put it on the agenda. They had a meeting. That maybe the meeting previous was devoted entirely towards this thing, but there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to get them to officially at least say to you, yes, we met on it, and we decided you may or may not.
I think there's something on our agenda as well. This has been something I've been trying to get for the last 2 years. Rob Brewer made that petition about it, and I've been wanting to bring it in front of the council for a month, so I'm going to bring it up on the 24th so that we can discuss it at that meeting, as well as those 3 student council resolutions about having seniors be able to run as and vote as alumni, which it can happen in multiple different ways. We can also just move back the deadline for voting until after graduation or something. Or fix it too. So multiple ways of doing it, but those 2 things we want to really run up in July.
Just from the student perspective, we have been to at least 2 board meetings. We've been outside of 3, and after that, after those sort of break-ins, they started to hold meetings off campus. We had a goose chase in February for a meeting that we later learned wasn't even happening here, so they got driven fully underground. So this is the first meeting after the off-campus board meeting, and we'll see if they have it on campus. Obviously, we're around.
Couldn't we just email some of the trustees?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like Kevin and John, they don't know if they're not officially trustees yet, I think. So yeah, maybe it's worth emailing some of the other trustees.
Until what? December. The alumni trustee thing is actually so he will be in for a few extra months.
And then the other thing is just that I forgot.
So I have a hypothetical question. If the board were to hold a meeting and vote on a decision and conduct the meeting not in accordance with their charter, would that decision still be upheld? Because it is in their charter.
I mean, you would
the charter says only 4 meetings a year. At least 4 meetings a year.
Not all.
I don't think ordinance says that.
I think it just says the location has to be announced in the most recent one to the trustees, not to the public.
Yeah, and that's between the secretary and the
I'd like to see a show of hands. I mean, who feels that the school could be free? I mean, I'm not going to charge tuition. And, I mean,
now?
From now, I'll never charge tuition.
Wait, that's a weird question. Things have to change. Things for fields.
Things that it can stay free without ever charging.
That's why we're here.
We didn't think it was
It can be done. I don't know whether we want to.
We have a lot of people
Yeah,
that don't feel it. So we feel that.
Yeah, I think that's the idea. Not the way things are now. like, but obviously there's a lot of things to change to make that happen, but it's possible. Yeah.
I mean, John's an old friend of mine. I've known him for 35. I have a lot of faith in him. He's a great administrator. He's a really smart guy, and he actually has a different opinion. And so, for me, he's the president of the Alumni Association, and this is, I hate to, but what do you think?
I think unless some radical changes are made, Cooper has to charge tuition for a period of time. And what I want to do is make sure that it's temporary and it gets reduced. I've run a lot of big projects for a long time, and I know that it's really, really hard to cut costs in private industry. And I've been through quite a few of them. They're very wrenching and traumatic. And I look at this institution, and I look at just all the turmoil and all the craziness that's gone over the 2 years, and I say to myself, well, how could they reduce their costs by an order of magnitude of $12 to $16 million a year quickly without destroying themselves? And frankly, I don't see it.
Who's they?
Meaning the school. Just in terms of the structure. And so for me, what I want to do is I want to set up a structure going forward in which we are all clear that if we're going to do the tuition and you expect us to get behind the school, and then we're going to raise money to get us back to tuition free. Otherwise, I'm not interested.
When you said without some radical changes happening, you can't envision the possibility of the school going tuition, are you referring to cutting the budget that dramatically, or are you also speaking about other possible radical changes?
Cutting the budget that dramatically.
Why do you feel that $12 million figure is the?
Well, that was the other thing.
Because just because that's the current deficit doesn't mean that's the
I agree with you there.
deficit for all
So
time.
part of what I'll say is, based upon that oh shit moment I had in your apartment,
Right.
in which you laid it out in front of me, in which I said, and I'll quote myself, "We are fucked."
I remember, yeah.
That's what I said. We are fucked. As good as Barry's analysis is, we don't know how real it is. We don't know how true it is. And so...
Why do you say that? Is that because there's been reports that haven't been...
No, it's because I know how people report costs. And there's a lot of ways you can report costs. And because I've run large projects myself, and I've had to report, up, and I know how people report costs. And so I do know that a lot of Barry's questions have dramatically changed how people talk about budget and the costs, and that's one of the reasons I'm really deeply appreciative of all the work that Barry has done, because Barry single-handedly has changed the conversation.
I know.
And the Friends of Cooper, with the way forward, single-handedly changed the conversation. There are structural changes that have occurred over the last 2 years as a result of both of those things occurring. And I'm very hopeful that we can get to where we need to go. But I also am realistic, because I live in a world where I have to deal with all that stuff. And so I look at this as, I look at Cooper and I think about what it would take for us to actually do that, and I just don't see it happening.
John, we're talking about a we that's going to make all this happen, and Barry's talking about
All of us. But that includes the Board of Trustees, that includes the faculty, that includes the alum.
In what way? I mean,
Aaron, that's for me, that's the central issue. The central issue is there's no.
Things until we figure
can I finish? You asked me a question.
Sorry.
In my view, there is no place for us to even have the discussion in going forward. And I think that's the biggest problem that we have. There's no place where, for instance, you, who represents the part-time faculty, Richard Stott, for the staff, for the art faculty, for the architecture faculty, for the humanities faculty. I mean, how do they all come to the table and say, okay, let's chart Cooper's future? How do we do that? It's not occurring.
Well,
I'm done.
that's right.
I'm done.
When you start looking at it, Cooper is the most amazingly dysfunctional governance and administrative structure. It's like a genius, it has its own genius and dysfunction. And so hardly anybody can do anything except possibly the board. But I mean,
I would question that.
Yeah, right.
I think when you read the transcript of the last board meeting, it seems in a lot of areas that they're just kind of clueless.
And
through no fault of theirs, I might add.
Well, I mean, there's the board is missing members. I mean, they can't attract anybody. If somebody wants to get involved in this.
They're free to leave.
Crap. Yeah, well, and by the way, I think one of the things about mentioning legal things is that people will see before that starts to happen. And you don't actually have to follow through on it. But I think one of the most important things, we don't want to duplicate that mess. If there's a weed and we want to move forward, we have to figure.
It used to be that traditional information technology could handle all your business needs. When your workload demands increased, you could simply add more infrastructure and applications. But times have changed. Your business is changing faster than ever, and just adding more is not enough. That's why many businesses have turned to the cloud, with the promise of innovating faster and driving business growth. And with many public, private, and managed cloud offerings available, the future looks bright. But the promise of cloud brings new challenges. How do you get all your cloud solutions working together seamlessly? Enter HP's Converged Cloud. Converged Cloud is a strategy for bringing together the best of public, private, and managed clouds, and even traditional IT. With a portfolio of enterprise-grade cloud solutions, HP helps you make your business more agile and innovative while providing choice, confidence, and consistency. The HP Converged Cloud empowers your business to innovate, letting you drive top-line growth and bottom-line performance.
Great, tell you how I'm great. Great is what you find me up to do. Wait, show you how I'm great. Great whenever I belong with you.
Figure out some kind of structures that actually function and work. And it's not easy. I mean, even these revenue generating programs that you suggested, if the president stays, he'll put in place. I mean, you can't do that. You can't just go around and reconfigure all the ways that the schools and the faculties are teaching in order for people to start doing this and that. I mean, that isn't even going to happen. I mean,
certainly trying to do it, and he's
no, it's not. Well, there's a path already happened.
Well, Marin, I agree with you.
So,
that's why I think meetings such as this are so important.
Yeah, I know. I guess I just get. I've been thinking about this, the whole year. Like, who is the we?
Thinking about it for the last 2 years. And I think the we is who we say it is.
Well, actually, that's not true because there are actual legalities to get in the way of that.
But we're pushing against them.
Well, maybe I, as a union president, think that's a bad thing. I mean, there are things that just have to be, looked at, sitting down very carefully with them, and put on the table. And
but what table is that? Is the problem?
Well, maybe there's one on Wednesday when we talk about governance. But, and I mean, I'm happy to talk all summer. But I just want to make the point that it's very idealistic to not to take account of all of the real, genuine, material barriers.
But there is certainly a history of, for better word, institutions that are in financial trouble of partnering with their own unions and putting representation of unions on their own boards.
I'm not just speaking of the unions, actually, although that is
that is certainly.
I understand.
So we have alumni participation, representation on the trustees, and what is changing is the notion that those those alumni somehow are tied to confidentiality agreements that legally cannot actually exist. So we've now put an alumni trustee on the board who believes in transparency and is going to do what he can to communicate, and we've already had alumni forums with trustees where they have communicated.
I think we're going to be able to fix that.
I think we are fixing that already.
Yeah. The whole issue of the
what I wonder is that every single time a trustee says, well, that could involve the union, and the union will never agree to that, whether they're speaking from a point of view of they just despise unions and they believe they need to track them or whatever, or whether they're somehow talking from a point of view of I already talked to the union secretly, and you know, it comes to some kind of weird secret agreement that they won't agree to it. So everything I hear from the union is, of course, we want to, you know, talk with you and negotiate, and we're not hard-nosed idiots.
Listen, I don't want to appear that I'm just running out the door because I have someplace I want to go, but I want to address what you said. Yes, it is very idealistic on my part to say that that is my personal position. And the reason why it is my personal position is I do not see Cooper having a sustainable future unless the we that actually runs this school is completely inclusive. I don't see it. No, I agree with you. And I agree with you that that is not the case right now. And what I'm saying to you, and I'm not even suggesting it, what I'm saying out loud is I don't know how we're going to do this, but I do not see any other way for Cooper to have the sustainable future that we're all talking about, that's tuition-free, that does not have an inclusive we as part of the governance. I just don't see it.
I totally agree with you.
Right. And how we get there is going to be very difficult and extremely messy, but what I say is if we don't stand up and take a stand for that and say that that's where we're going to go and create a space large enough for us all to stand in and make that happen, we won't get there.
The problem is
that's what bothers me more than anything else is the thought of Cooper for some reason going away because we didn't stand up.
Right. The problem
well, I think just to add in like a student perspective too, because I think I hear a lot of also just like different like moving parts and things that just like it's hard like working in that system, but I see like those plates moving in terms of changing the alumni council, literally changing the board, changing the association to be more inclusive, having these kind of meetings. So a lot is changing within the system, but I also think that like something that is exciting to me is the student perspective, where like it goes back to the mediation question, where like they're asking students that are occupying to sit down with the administration. And it's not clear to us who those people even are because they're so quiet and no one knows where the decisions like really come from. And the other question that I ultimately have for the mediators is how do I sit at a table with someone whose authority I don't recognize? And I think that's what brings a lot of the students here is that like literally like students are willing to not recognize the authority of the current administration and the legitimacy of the structures that put them there.
Yes.
So when John talks about a radical change, I see those changes happening on a not radical, slow level already. But I also see if the students can keep up what we're doing and to have a larger group supporting the students, even going about your own day-to-day progress, is that radical change of what would it, like, I think Mary, I don't know if she's still here, she had a really good phrase, but what does a cooperative union look like? Like Cooper and cooperative.
Right.
So I think that's something that, like, it's almost like a paradigm shift in the minds
I
of.
don't think it almost is. I think it is.
Yeah, it's a total paradigm.
I think it's already underway.
Yeah. So it's worth considering because that's the part that gets me excited.
You may as well.
And just to, I mean, as I said, this comes out of a great deal of respect for John, and what he says carries weight to me. And if he says that he doesn't see a way forward without charging tuition, I personally take that pretty seriously. But I'd also like to ask you to do a little mind game because I have this emotional